on the public, because normies, they're brainwashed by this sophisticated propaganda. And if they were exposed to alternative voices, they would get it. But it isn't happening right now. More speech also means more money for the platform, and less content moderation means less of an expense. DLive allows content creators to keep 90% of what they make. I didn't even realize it was that good. Cut off from mainstream payment services like PayPal, GoFundMe, and Patreon, they began to embrace digital currencies. Oh, they better come after those, replace those. DLive was founded in December by Chinese entrepreneurs Chen and Wayne. They wanted to rival Twitch. They're focused on esports, lifestyle, cryptos, and news. And they take a small cut, less moderation. PewDiePie supported. In June 2020, I didn't know this, DLive seemed to be openly cultivating a right-of-center audience on Twitter. It briefly changed its bio to read "All Lives Matter." Oh man, that's pretty evil. They're targeting the right of center. You know, it's okay for let's see if Twitter still has it. Yeah. It's okay for Twitter to have Black Lives Matter and Black trans lives matter. You know, nobody talks about the cultural Marxism and the LGBTQ agenda with Viacom and MTV and VH1 and BET, Nickelodeon, and Hollywood. Who do they follow? Probably just Jack. Oscar the Grouch. That's really weird. Anyway, they support that, but you know, it's a crime for DLive to not put Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter instead. Before Harvard Shorenstein Center says, before on YouTube, some of these people would do a dance with the terms of service. Oh, so they didn't actually break the rules. They just followed the rules and still spoke as much truth as possible. How dare them? But on DLive, the gloves are off, and it's just full, quote, white supremacist content with very few caveats. Maybe with some accounts do that, but other more strategic and intelligent accounts know that optics matter, and it's not just about censorship. It's about winning hearts and minds and the real, true moral high ground. But they're right about this. When you censor, when you kick people off of the big platforms, they are going to go to alternatives. They're going to get in echo chambers. They're going to become radicalized. They know all this is going to happen. On the night, this is so funny. They're complaining. This must be so surreal to be Nick Fuentes and to just be smeared everywhere in the media and kicked off of YouTube, and then you're trying to build his website up or his channel up on DLive. And Time Magazine, the owner with $8 billion, is crying about him making $100,000. Fuentes had 56% of the site's total viewership at 10 p.m. His channel's huge. I've seen him with like almost 20,000 live viewers. According to the review of the site's analytics, 39% was viewers of 22 other extremist personalities streaming their commentary. So DLive is basically 100% alternative media streamers now. The company may be more reliant on those accounts now. Some users have left the site complaining publicly about the virulent racism and anti-Semitism spilling over into regular channels and game streams. DLive is a safe haven for racist and alt-right streamers. One user wrote on Twitter on June 22nd, seems to, so somebody just said on Twitter that it's so awful, let's shut it down. Seems to me DLive is the new platform for white supremacists, wrote another, echoing. I'm so tired of hearing the term white supremacist. All of these Jewish supremacists constantly hyping up anybody that calls out their supremacy a supremacist is just total projection. That's funny, I know. Fuentes totally sounds like a white nationalist name, I know. They call it a literal Nazi breeding ground and a place where racists don't get deplatformed. You know what? I'm against racism. I shouldn't say, depends on how you define racism. I'm against racial supremacism. That's why I'm against the most supremacist cult-like tribe in the world. And it's not white people. But people have the right to talk about race. The way that they frame this now is to just talk about race, while BLM is just being painted in the streets, and all the major establishment companies and corporations are donating like $100 million to BLM. It's being promoted across every big social media and every big media company. And white people want to just talk about race, and they want to shut you down. I mean, there's such a war on Esau and Amalek, who they see as Europeans, but really all non-Jews, is so transparent now. The migration of hate speech, and this is the end, we're about at the end. The migration of hate speech to far-flung corners of the internet could make it harder to track. So they have just been tracking everything on the internet for probably 20 years, since 9/11. And Israel and the ADL has access to all of it, increasing the risk that it spills into the offline world. And then this whole article, as always, is, oh, it's full of, they're going to cause terrorism, they're going to cause shootings and stuff, as if that kind of stuff hasn't always happened. And it's just like, just because one person goes out and does something crazy, I mean, it's inevitable in a country with 300 million people, with such polarization and so much going on and so much mental illness and so much violence that's glamorized in the media and in entertainment and in Hollywood. It's inevitable that there's going to be people that go out and snap and do things. And they try to use these rare incidences of crazies to try to shut down all free speech. The recently repackaging of white nationalist youth movement with new names like America First. So being America First is a terrorist motto now, they basically say. Or the Groypers. So again, just a full-on attack on Fuentes. Gussied up as campus conservatives. This is the argument they always try to do. Oh yeah, they may sound reasonable and they may dress nice and they're not goose stepping and doing that kind of thing, but they really all love all of that secretly, and they're just pretending to sound reasonable and not be extremists. They always say that, but they secretly are, because we say so. Friedberg of Harvard Shorenstein Center puts it, so they are not triggering the same warning bells. So they're warning bells, they're just making the bar lower and lower for what qualifies as what gets deplatformed. And even if something doesn't look bad, it's secretly bad and dangerous. One solution may be to follow the money. As content creators migrate to new platforms in search of new financial opportunities, white supremacists have become particularly assiduous at exploiting new methods of fundraising. Notice just doing a show or making videos and people voluntarily putting out the content for free and people liking it and donating on their own will voluntarily. They consider that exploitation. You hear that, guys? You guys donating to content creators you like is exploitation. New methods of fundraising, often seeking out platforms that have not yet realized how extremists can exploit them. Yeah, I don't think DLive feels exploited that big tech is censoring everybody, so everybody's moving over there. They're probably they're getting bigger numbers, they're raising more money, and they're allowing free speech, freedom, a battle of ideas. They're not being exploited. I'm not exploiting DLive. President of the programs of the Anti-Defamation League. It's funny, the ADL, it came out, the guidebook, the internal guidebook of PayPal, that they had slides where they're like, we're going to censor all these things, anti-immigration. So you just have to be pro-mass immigration or you're banned from PayPal, the biggest payment processor on the internet. They say we're working with our extended partners at the ADL. So, and then they also say they're going to censor not white supremacy, not white nationalism, white advocacy. White advocacy was how they listed it. So the ADL, a Jewish advocacy group that branched out from B'nai B'rith, but the ADL of B'nai B'rith, the Jewish advocacy group that is committed to the security of the Jewish people and the state of Israel, that is their job, are shutting down and deplatforming white advocates on PayPal. Every other racial group can advocate and can organize together except one group. How does anybody think that that's fair? And a lot of people don't. I know my channel, I've got followers who are people of color, Mexican, Black, Arab, probably a bunch of other countries. I could check the analytics. And they know. They tell me, they send me emails. They say, I see what's going on. I mean, how can you not see the overt anti-European agenda going on? Not just in America, but all over Europe. And it's so obvious who's behind it, this fellow white people thing every single time. The ADL boycotts Facebook, and then they implement the rule, you can't talk about Jews controlling the world on Facebook. So the 1% supremacist tribe that's always been known since the beginning of time of taking over and wanting to control the world, you're not allowed to say that anymore, even though it can all be found beyond any reasonable doubt just by reading their text. See, I'm Hispanic in here. I know. You guys see it. We know who the true supremacists are. Here, Joe Biden's pick, Senator Kamala Harris. Fuentes told his audience on DLive, quote, she hates white people. She is going to use the full weight of the federal government to destroy conservatives. No, the Democrats would never try to destroy the conservatives. To destroy America first, she'll be Israel first. She bends the knee at AIPAC. She reads off the pledge to AIPAC. She gets down on her knees, just like she got to her political position. She started her career. Now she gets on her knees at AIPAC. Anybody that speaks up for white people. Well, Biden literally says he's a proud Zionist and that America is going to be non-white majority anymore and that that's a good thing. They say it's a good thing. They want it to happen faster. And then they say anybody that talks about that is hate speech and a white supremacist and that it's just a conspiracy theory out of the other side of their mouth. This is the funniest part, how they end the article. Such kvetching, such pathetic crying from this Alejandro de la Garza from New York, his ivory tower at Time Magazine in New York. NBC and ABC News, which have a combined 13 million subscribers on YouTube, had an average of 6,100 concurrent viewers watching their coverage. Fuentes' show had 9,000. They're so upset. I mean, I can only imagine what it's like to be Nick Fuentes and to read an article from Time Magazine, like one of the biggest, oldest American media companies, magazines in the world, crying that you're getting more views than NBC and ABC. More views than them on YouTube. He's getting more views on DLive than they're getting on YouTube. Surreal. Totally surreal. Okay, so DLive, hang in there, strong. We love you. I'm so glad you're there. I hope BitChute pulls it together. BitChute needs to pull it together and get live streaming and stop sharing so much Zionist propaganda and Zionist people on Twitter. It's a huge concern, actually. I'm really actually worried about BitChute, the stuff they've been sharing on Twitter. So this new definition of anti-Semitism I've talked so much about that they're trying to push everywhere that's so vague.